Hello and welcome to the show. Having spent plenty of hours on Dirt Rally 2 over the last few days, I thought it time to share my thoughts, share my opinions on this particular game. And, well, seeing as it's a racing game, let's start with the all-important driving physics. You will be pleased to hear they are excellent on here. They are absolutely excellent on here. And while, of course, I don't know quite how realistic, having, you know, never driven a rally car down a rally stage, or a rally car in general even, they are very good fun to drive. Your Group B cars are as terrifying as you would expect. The Group A cars, quite nice. I say safe, that's probably not the right word for a rally car, but the Group A cars are quite nice and grippy to go driving with. The rear-wheel drive cars I'm terrible with. That's not the game's fault, that's just me being a muppet. I quite like the front-wheel drive cars, they work for me. I can kind of throw the front-wheel drive cars around, no problem. But, yeah, the cars drive very well. It's less forgiving than the likes of Dirt 4, which is what you would expect. You know, Dirt 4 more arcadey game. This, yeah, the cars don't have, I say limitless grip, that's other games they don't have limitless grip, but you know, you're going to be sliding around, you're on gravel, you're on dirt at 40 miles an hour, you are going to be sliding around plenty. It's kind of what I would expect, how I would expect the cars to be reacting. You know, they bounce around as you go across bumps, etc. It's all very, very good fun to drive it. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is do I enjoy driving the cars on here? The answer is categorically yes. And perhaps most impressively of all is this is, you know, a more sim-based driving game, and it works incredibly well on a controller. And this isn't me having to have spent 2 hours and going through 20 guides to find controller settings that work for me. This is, I plugged a controller in and I was racing no problem. It's great fun on a wheel. If you have a wheel, fantastic, but not everybody has the space or the money for a setup to race on games with a wheel, so you'll be very, very pleased to know that this works amazingly well on controller. It is probably the best sim game I've ever played on a controller, and certainly the easiest to just plug the 360 controller I use in and you're ready to go. I don't find myself thinking I'm at a horrendous disadvantage because I'm on a controller. I mean, I'm terrible at the I'm not very good at the game. I'm at a disadvantage because I'm not very good with rally cars, but it's not because I'm fighting the controller or the car's doing something unexpected, and you know, because I'm on a controller and so on. So that is a, you know, very, very high praise for this game. It is incredibly well done to have been as comfortable as it is driving these vehicles on a controller. Now, not only does the game drive great, it looks great, it sounds great. The stages are incredibly pretty. There are some incredibly pretty stages. Argentina in particular for me is one of the standout locations here. There are some absolutely breathtaking areas and that you are trying to race through incredibly quickly, and they are, I mean, about a car's width wide, so the bridges you're firing the vehicles onto. Yeah, there are some absolutely fantastic looking settings. Now, I am, yes, playing this on PC. I have quite the monstrous PC and can whack all the graphics settings up. But in general, this is a very, very good looking game. The cars sound fantastic. There's plenty of popping and banging from the rally cars, as you would expect. There's plenty of kind of weather conditions for the game to be throwing your way. Everything looks fantastic. I would expect that. We've come to expect these fantastic looking games from Codemasters, and yeah, this one certainly doesn't disappoint. You've got plenty of details inside all of the cars. The little Lancia Fulvia's got I love the details on the cars. Like the Lancia Fulvia's got a little pencil stuck onto the dashboard. And it's just little bits and pieces like that. Yeah, it looks incredible. As I said, can't really fault the sounds with this stuff. As far as kind of stages go and whatnot, I will say I'm kind of doing this review based on the base game. There may be DLC. I don't know whether there's going to be free updates, but paid DLC and whatnot coming further down the line. I'm going to be talking about this game based on what is there now, what it is you are going to be playing now. And while the countries that are here are spectacular, there is the lack of a snow rally at the moment. Is that a shame? Yes, very, very much so. I am a big fan of the snowy rallies. Like to Sweden and so on are a terrifying challenge, and while it might be coming later on, at the moment there isn't any snow stages to worry about, which is a bit of a shame on this one, because they are perhaps some of the prettiest rallies that you will do, full stop. However, what is there is very, very good indeed. Car-wise as well, plenty of variety on this one. If you are if you're wanting to race classic cars, there are plenty of those. You've got front-wheel drive cars, things like, for example, the classic Mini. There's even a little Citroen DS, the old Citroen DS for if you want to go rallying in that, Lancia Fulvia, the likes of the 205 GTI are in here. You go up to the rear-wheel drive cars, you've got Fiat 131, Renault Alpine, and so on. BMW E30 is in here, the Opel Ascona, Lancia Stratos, and the like. And then you start getting to Group B cars. You've got plenty of all-wheel drive machinery, 205 T16, Delta S4. You move on to kind of more modern cars, the Group A cars, the likes of the Evo 6, Subaru Impreza, Lancia Deltas. You know, it's got just about everything that you could want from rally cars here. While we don't have the full-on WRC cars because, well, they're licensed for the WRC games, we do have the R5 cars, which are, I presume, perhaps a little slower than the full-on WRC cars, but still bloody fast. You know, very, very fast modern rally cars. Perhaps the most interesting of categories, though, is the Rally GT category, in which we have an Aston Martin V8 Vantage, a Camaro, and a Ford Mustang. These are all the GT4 cars. There is a 911 as well, if you have the deluxe version of the game. I have been lucky enough to watch the V8 Vantage go around the Goodwood Rally stage a couple of years ago. That is a seriously spectacular sight, I'm not going to lie. Spectacular sight and sound of a V8 Vantage going rally, and it's fantastic to see this class of car. I presume the Camaro and Mustang are just the GT4 versions of the car. I don't know if anyone rallies those, but they're certainly, at the moment, they're actually trying to bring back kind of the rear-wheel drive rally cars. I know Fiat got the 124 and Jaguar made an F-type go round. So it's a fun class to have. A very difficult class to drive, I'm going to be honest. Not great for me, but a very, very fun class to, you know, have to play around. It's nice to have these options. Yes, there could be a few more classes of cars. The kit cars, for example, the Peugeot, was it 306C Ibiza? I can't speak, but they aren't here, and neither are really any of the rear-wheel drive Group P cars like the Opel Manta and so on aren't here. They may come further down the road, sure, but at the moment we don't have those cars to play around with. What's here is, you know, plenty varied and all very, very good fun to go driving with. There are a few more that I might like to have seen in this, but I'm still going to spend... It's going to take me long enough to learn how to drive the bloody rear-wheel drive GT cars, let alone any more on that. There's plenty to keep you busy. There's certainly plenty to keep you busy, as there is here, and some interesting, unusual vehicles along the way. Not only, of course, have we got the rally events, we've also got the Rally Cross, I believe the full season of tracks, the full championship, if you like, is on here, and I do love a good Rallycross event. They are bonkers. Basically, the Rallycross events are mad. You've got all of the full-on Rallycross supercars. You've got the cross carts are back, the little strange buggy, the RX2, the slightly lower category of Rallycross cars, and the 1600 Rallycross. So you've got a few different categories of that to play around with, and yeah, the races can be incredibly exciting. Particular for me, I love the Catalunya circuit. That's a particular standout track. I don't know, it works for me. It works for me. But some of the old favourites are back. Places like Hell, for example, are here. There's the new, I presume, newer Silverstone Rallycross layout. A little bit of shame we don't have the likes of Linden Hill, but this is what the actual Rallycross Championship is going to, not just a selection of tracks picked, which, you know, I would perhaps rather have Linden Hill than a made in Silverstone one. However, that's what the actual championship is doing, so, you know, we get those. The Canadian one is also quite good fun to drive around. So yeah, you can not only spend many, many hours trying to learn how to do the rally stages and drive those cars fast, then you've got the completely different style of driving in the form of Rallycross. It's certainly going to keep you busy. There is certainly an awful lot here to be keeping you busy. And the next thing, and perhaps to me one of the most impressive things that this game does, is, well, the little details. The little details that we have to contend with now are turning events from just a straight up point to point into, well, an actual event, turning a championship into an actual, you know, an actual event that you have to contend with more than just outright pace. So, things that we now have to worry about. Not only, we've had weather being a potential thing for I think on a dirt rally, I think original dirt rally we had weather could change as you went through a stage. So the running order is the order that the competitors set off on down the stage, because, you know, this is time trial essentially. So the first car will be setting off maybe an hour, 2 hours or whatever earlier than the cars that run at the end. Weather can be different between them. The cars that go off first can be in the dry, cars go off later can be in the wet, and vice versa. But now you also have to contend with the track. The track will change, the track will evolve, the stage will change as the cars run through. Now, I am not a fast enough driver to really notice the difference. I'm not experienced enough with the game and fast enough with the cars to really ultimately notice the difference. But, well, theoretically in real rallying, it depends on what country you're in, it depends on what sort of stages, of course, you're running in. But the first cars that will go through are basically the sweepers. The stage is very, very dusty. So the first cars go through, clear it up. Cars in the middle kind of have ideal conditions, and cars much later on in the running order have to then run through what is then a very, very cut-up course. It might change depending on what sort of surface and so on is happening, etc. But on here, you are going to be contending with that surface evolution. I don't know if it quite does the dusty for the cars setting off first, but certainly the stage gets worse if you are running later on in the order, and the cars that are fastest run last. So if you're at the top of the champion, or top of the event, top of the rally, you're going to be running at the back, and then having to worry about the stage being a bit more cut up. It'll be a little bit more bumpy, it'll cause you a little bit more grief in a few places. There just might not quite be the same grip in some of the corners that you are familiar with. Now, you can turn this all off if you don't want to, and I think for things like time trials and whatnot, it'll probably be set to, well, it'll be turned off. But when it comes to the actual championship, when it comes to the career mode and whatnot, much more fun to leave it on. It gives you something else to have to be worrying about with all this. So I quite like that, but as I said, I'm not the most experienced, not necessarily fast enough to really tell you the ultimate difference through those. Damage is also a big factor. Now, it always has been, of course, in a rally game. Mistakes are very easy to make here and often punished very, very heavily because you're running between trees and rocks, and the road's often about as wide as your car, and that's it. You run a little bit wide, you hit something, you run the risk of damaging your car. Now, plenty of rally games, of course, have had damage over the years. A lot of times I've criticised rally games with their, unless you utterly abuse the car, unless you throw the car off almost every single corner, whenever you get to the service halt, normally you'll have a couple of stages of service halt and then a couple of stages and so on and so forth. Normally, unless you've really battered your car, you'll get to the service halt, repair everything, and go out again with a fresh car for 2 more stages. Often how it works. On here, that's not really the case. I've had varying experiences with this, but from one, semi-sizable hit, you can often break your car in such a way that it'll need extensive repairing, to the point where you're going to have to manage time. You're going to have to manage what goes on with the repairs. There are 3 stages of repairing your vehicle. You can do a standard fix, you can do a quick fix, which is much faster than the standard fix, but you then can't repair that part again, and I think it loses durability and so on, and then you can do a full-on replace. Now, some bits can only be replaced, things like lights, for example, if you knock those off, or I think brakes as well might have to be replaced, like brake pads and so on, but they have to be fully replaced, and that takes an awful lot of time, so you're going to have to manage the time. Example, I had I was doing a live stream on this game. I was racing the Lancia Fulvia in a night race, and I'd slightly pinged the front bumper in the stage. Like, it was an evening stage, I pinged the front bumper on a rock, and I was starting to lose my light. And as I was going through this stage, the lights were flickering. The lights would go off for a second and then come back on, and they gradually get worse and worse throughout the stage until I made a mistake because I was struggling to see. Clipped something, lights were gone. And then I had to try and go through the rest of this stage with no lights on the car, which was A, very difficult, and B, we got to service halt and had to put new lights on it. I didn't have a choice. We had to get new lights on the car, and that took up a big chunk of my time, and then I couldn't fix other things that were wrong with the car. And that's what rallying, I say to me, but that's what makes the rallying exciting, is that it's not just how fast you can get from point A to B, but you've got to look after the car, you've got to protect the car in some instances, and you've got to make these tough decisions when it comes to try and repair the vehicles, and this game does it best. This game does it best that I have come across, and that, as I said, turns these, what would perhaps be normal, straightforward championships into more of a spectacle, into more event, into just more exciting, and that's what I like to see. I mean, you combine that as well with, there is a kind of team aspect to this. Now, I haven't actually played through as much of the career mode. I've kind of been more experimenting with time trials and custom championships and so on. However, you do have to... You can upgrade your car, so you can upgrade your vehicle's engine and so on along the way, which will make it faster but make it less durable. Now everyone's just going to go make it as fast as possible, but then you will have to deal with the car falling apart more if you hit stuff. I don't know if there's real part wear going on over time, which would be good to see, but I can't comment too much on that as I haven't seen any, but I also haven't done enough events perhaps to expect it to have seen it. Also, the stages I'm at, most of my repairs are free. I think when you get further on, once you've got past like the first main championship, I think you're going to have to start paying to replace parts, repair parts, and so on. You have got a team as well that you can manage. You've got engineers and whatnot that you can upgrade. You can spend money recruiting more, so they'll repair your car faster or be better at perhaps repairing a specific bit of the vehicle, and maybe help save you some time in some of the repair halts and whatnot. There's a lot of depth when it comes to this aspect of the rally, or more depth than we've seen from previous rally games, and I've come across kind of more grief and what it's just dealing with this stuff, and I'm pleased to see that. I'm very, very pleased to see that, because it makes the events more exciting. It makes it more than just a straightforward go here, do a race, go here, do a race. You've got more to be thinking about, which in rally terms is what you would have to be worrying about. I will say, a slight criticism on this though, while yes, detail on here is very good, a couple of things that slightly irritate me. Well, let's say one thing in specific in this aspect. There is an option to turn on unexpected events. Now, when I got this option, it was all very exciting. I thought, oh, maybe we're going to see, weird goings-on on the stage for me. Maybe we're going to see unexpected, mechanical failures on my car, and so on and so forth. The problem is that these unexpected events seem to happen to the AI and only the AI. They seem to be the ones that have the weird, exciting times, and we just have to kind of sit and hear about it afterwards. When you finish a stage, there is an option to go on to an event, I think it's events notes or something like that, that will tell you bits and pieces about what went on for your car and what went on for the AI cars. So if you've pinged the wall a couple of times, it might say minor bodywork damage, clutch slipping, engine overheating, that sort of thing along the way. And it will say similar things for the AI cars, got a puncture, had whatever bits and pieces broke on their cars, and so on and so forth. You do sometimes on a stage, and a couple of times you'll be driving along and there'll be a marshal at the side of the road, like warning you, trying to tell you to slow down because there's a broken down car on the side of the road. Little details like that, very, very cool. You will go past, the occasional stricken AI car. They actually crash off and jump start in the rallycross as well. These things can happen. But there are times when they have all sorts of weird and wacky things. They'll have like spectators in the road. They'll have, I think one of the ones we've seen before is like freak dust storms and so on. And I want that to happen to me. It feels like the AI are having a more exciting time, a more eventful time than I am. And that's a little bit of a shame. That's a little bit of a shame that we don't seem to have that occur to the player. Now, it might be that I've not come across any of these events and that it can happen, just exceedingly rare. I have done quite a lot of different rallies. I think I probably would have at least come across one of them. And again, that's the challenge of rally. Different things can happen. Different, weird and wonderful things can go on that you've just got to deal with. Hell, I've seen, I can't remember what driver it was, had a tractor wandering on the stage by accident at one point. Yeah, sort of weird things go on, and they go on for the AI, or seemingly go on for the AI, because the game tells you they go on for the AI, and not for you. And that's just a little bit of a bummer. That's just a little bit of a bummer. I'd like to see those things go on for me. You could have even like simple things, like rocks chucked onto the road. I've heard of it before, when a car goes through a stage, cuts a corner a bit, chucks a bunch of rocks onto the road, next car goes across and punches a tyre on them because they weren't expecting there to be the rocks there. And just little things like that I would have liked, but I mean, I guess that is starting to nitpick a little bit, but it is annoying that the AI seem to have a more exciting time than you, or a more eventful time than you, in some instances. But there is still plenty for you to be worrying about if you've put all the performance upgrades on your car and your car's a little bit fragile and you've taken a big jump, and you might be worried about things start falling apart on your vehicle. So, yeah, there's still plenty to be dealing with yourself. While on the subject of the AI, might be one of my bigger criticisms with this game is difficulty levels. When you get it right, it's brilliant. When you get it right, it is absolutely brilliant, and I thought this game had largely fixed it. In the first couple of rallycross events I did at Catalonia, and so I think it was hell, I drove around. I had the AI on 75%, and it was absolutely spot on. I mean, we saw, some of you may well have seen the rallycross video I did at Catalonia. That was at 75% difficulty with it. I started off at 80% difficulty with that. It was a little too fast for me, so I turned it down to 75%, and that was spot on, absolutely perfect. On a pristine run, I was right there fighting with the front. We made a little mistake. I was in the midfield. You know, you were battling, you were overtaking, you were defending. It worked absolutely wonderfully. The problem is, it doesn't work like that everywhere else. It doesn't work like that. I went to the Canadian circuit. In a stream, I put it down to 70 because I thought, well, I don't know this track at all. I'll probably be a bit slow, so we'll go down to 70 and have a bit of fun with the AIs, thinking that, you know, me learning the track would be about right with that. And I obliterated the AIs. And we're talking, I could run a Joker lap every lap and still be ahead of them. The problem is that that was against the AIs in my heat. In the overall times, everyone was competitive with me. And that's very difficult to then try and set up a difficulty level almost for. I think it is more that the Canadian circuit, I'm not sure if the AIs weren't banging their cars on the wall and breaking something, because I did notice the AI kept hitting the walls in places, so I don't know if it was just because the cars that were loaded in my heat were breaking their cars, and the cars and their pace would be faster if they hadn't done it, and the cars are. But basically, it's inconsistent with the rallycross. I'm not quite sure why it's inconsistent, but it can be very, very inconsistent. As I said, if you get it right, you know, they actually race competitively with you very, very well when it's all set up right, but you will almost have to be setting the difficulty individually for each race, or for each track even, which is a bit of a faff. The rally stages themselves are, on the most part, better. Admittedly, of course, I'm not physically racing the cars there. You know, again, the game is coming up with a finish time for the vehicles rather than me actually having to race them, which the finish times were okay in the rallycross. It was just the actual physical racing that was the problem. But yeah, in the rallies it's not too bad, although I will say front-wheel drive seems to be very easy. Now, there is, of course, also an element of, while I like to think I'm okay at racing games, this driving is not my forte, and I am probably also inconsistent. Some stages I'm very fast, some stages not so fast, and again, with cars, some vehicles I'm probably working with better than others. So yeah, there is an element of me being inconsistent as well, but there are some, you know, quite ridiculous variations at times between what I'm doing and what we're doing. Like some stages you can win by absolute mile, and then you'll swap, or some car you'll win by a mile, you'll swap something else, and then you're miles behind. Yeah, front-wheel drive cars I seem to be able to go very quick compared to the AIs. Rear-wheel drive cars I'm terrible. All-wheel drive cars, when I'm at the same difficulty setting and so on, all-wheel drive cars I seem to be fairly competitive. So it's it's a bit of a faff. It is a bit of a faff. You'll probably have to play around and find what works, and you may well have to be changing it constantly. So there we go. I mean, other slight criticisms were mostly it's not the largest variety of rally stages. As I said, you know, there is no snow rally on here. The actual stages, there's no random course generator in this one, and of, let's say, the 10 stages a country might have, 4 of them are, well, probably 8 of them, let's say, are 4 forward and 4 backwards through the same stage, and perhaps a couple of other ones thrown on. Now, it is true that is what they do in actual rallies. That is what you find in the actual WRC with actual rally events, and I believe, I've been told at least, that these stages are actual real stages that they run the cars through, so sure, that makes sense. And there are some longer stages. There are some, you know, 8, 9, 10 mile long stages. There are some shorter ones as well, if, like me, you prefer your sort of 2, 4 mile stages, a few of those to deal with. But yeah, it isn't the largest variety of stages to ever be contended with. As I said, there may well be more stuff coming with DLC later, but this is what you're going to be playing on now. There's enough to be getting on with. There's certainly enough for me to try and figure out the cars. You'll have a lot of fun with what is there, but yeah, you might like a little bit more. For me, it's not a deal breaker not having a random course generator. Again, I'm going to spend long enough trying to learn, you know, bits and pieces here that I don't need a random course generator to keep me entertained. Sure, there will become a point where, you know, fast drivers will have learnt all the stages. To tell you the truth, fast drivers are going to be fast whether it's a random stage they've never driven or a stage they've driven down 100 times. Maybe the percentage might be slight, but you know, you're still going to be fast at them if you're a good driver regardless. So yeah, I mean, random course generator isn't a deal breaker for me, because there is plenty of fun, and you know, at the end of the day, you get these specifically designed, specifically created, or specifically replicated rally stages that are all going to work perfect. Well, I say perfectly, but as intended, rather than a random course one that might be quite iffy, not all that fun to drive around, and not quite work, and be an almost carbon copy of another one you drive. So Yeah, it works basically what is there, but I would like to see perhaps a little bit more variety. And I think that just about covers it. As far as conclusions go with this one, I would very, very much recommend Dirt Rally 2. It isn't perfect. It isn't perfect. There are bits and pieces that I would like to see worked upon. However, I think when you get everything right, when you've got the settings just right on a rally and you're going down some of the, you know, incredibly narrow, technical, fiddly, nasty rally stages and everything is working as intended, there's nothing quite as intense as this game. When you know one slip up is going to cause your car all sorts of grief, when you know that one little mistake is going to be incredibly punishing and could, you know, screw up a whole championship almost in places, the intensity of some of these races is fantastic. Yes, you might have to faff around with the difficulty setting to get it to work. That's a little bit of a shame. But when you have got it working, it's brilliant. It does just about everything Dirt Rally did, but a little better in almost every single area of the game. So yeah, if you played Dirt Rally, if you enjoyed Dirt Rally, you are going to enjoy this because it is more of it, it's a bit better, there's more detail, there's more depth for you to get into, if you like. So I would really, really recommend this game. There might be a couple of things that will frustrate you. Absolutely, there is with most games, let's be honest here. But you will have a fun time with this one. You will sink many hours into it, and probably you will roll many, many cars along the way and panic because you're not going to have enough time to fix them up. That is half the fun. I will say, just on the whole, like, damage side of things, if you don't want that, there is a setting to turn it off. You can turn off the damage, you can put on plenty of assists if you are newer to racing games and you don't quite want that daunting level of terrifyingness. There are settings, you can turn the damage down, you can, you know, give the car some assists to make them a little easier to drive, and so on and so forth. But to me, the fun is having that added level of danger because, again, that's kind of half the excitement of rallying. You know, you've got to deal with the unforgiving terrain. Yeah, I would very, very much recommend Dirt Rally 2. That, though, is going to be it for this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, a goodbye.